Alright, so mill operation. DTCs light the mill. This light that I have on in this picture, this is a service engine soon light. This isn't the mill. The mill, the little engine thing, and by the way, that's a specific color that it has to be, either that, also that orangey kind of reddish kind of color, that's a specific color that they have to be. That's mandated by the government. Okay, so the only reason why that can come on is due to emissions related. And it's 1.5 times its what? FTP. Now, some DTCs need 2 runs to set the mill, some only 1. Okay, Diagnostic Executive. Operations Management, Diagnostic Management. There is software in there that compiles these lists to decide what order they're done in and when they're done. Remember, higher authority stuff needs to be done first, and that's stuff that could, affect the way the car runs and drives and strand somebody. And then as we start moving down, it becomes like emissions related, big emission stuff, misfire codes. Those are going to take priority over just about everything, okay? Because that could damage the engine and put you into walking mode, tennis shoe mode, as I like to call it. All right. So we look at the stuff, and we have failure records also called freeze frames, and we'll talk about those in a second. We have these IM flags, inspection and maintenance flags, or the monitors, and then, we can get other information as well. Is the mill requested on? How many trips has it been since it's cleared? That kind of stuff. All right. So we get these pass-fail recordings, and then we got sensor monitoring, output monitoring, and then fuel trim and timing monitoring. This is all on my control side. And then, we have our monitoring side anyways. Diagnostic Management. All right. It's mainly in charge of, diagnostic testing, recording the test results. You understand that. And then we have like test fail actions, request defaults, and then driver alert. What's a driver alert? Well, check engine light. Nothing those are 2. Test fail actions and requesting defaults. These are 2 things that can help us or hurt us. Okay? If I go in and I disconnect a coolant temperature sensor, the engine coolant temperature sensor, I disconnect it. The car is going to go into these test fail actions. What's it going to do? It doesn't know the temperature of the coolant, so it's going to extrapolate that. It's going to guess based on, ambient temperature, how long the car is driven for. It has these records on the car, like, at 70 degrees, at 60 miles an hour, it took this long to reach operating temperature. It's going to assume that's where it is. But it's also going to do other stuff. It can't verify the engine temperature, and it doesn't want to blow it up. So one of the things that it does is it'll turn on the cooling fan. So the cooling fan will just come on and stay on. Why? Well, because it doesn't know how hot the engine is, which that's going to force the engine to run cooler, and that can cause you, the fuel economy, maybe some emission stuff. It's not going to like it. Let's say the math goes bad. Well, test fail actions are, it's going to look at, throttle position sensor and map to gauge MAF. Now, here's the crazy thing that you'll see. I get a MAF sensor that goes bad. On some platforms, when I drive it, I'll have a code for a MAF. I'll still be getting information off the MAF on my scan tool. But that's fake. That's computer-driven MAF numbers. You get it? And honestly, I've done this. I've actually gone, well, is it actually the MAF or is it the default? I'll go unplug the MAF and I'll still get numbers. It's fake. Get it? We need to be careful with this. This is why we go look at actual volt. Anyways, we'll talk about it when we get in the lab. All right, test failure. So we fail. We request the mill, or the service engine soon, or we put it on the DIC, the driver information display. It'll say on it, you've seen those cars has a scrolling marquee sign, hey, your car is broken, take it to a mechanic. And they'll generally store a freeze frame as well. So freeze frame is actually kind of critical. And I'm about to let a big secret out of the bag here. Okay? Just give me a minute on this freeze frame stuff. So it stores and updates this freeze frame every time, and this is not in any kind of an order, which can prove to be kind of an issue sometimes. We'll talk about this when we get into the lab. Anyways, so here's our codes, and we've got a P137 right here. So 137, a 3 and a 7 generally means specific vehicle system. A 1 is fuel and air metering. A P is powertrain, and a 0 is generic. If it was a P137, that would be a different code. That would be a manufacturer-specific code, which doesn't need to be the same as a P0137. Get it? Gotta watch these numbers. Now, the nice thing about it is a P0301 on any car is the same on the generic side, but it can be anything it wants on the manufacturer-specific side. Anyways, all right. Type ADTCs. These are emissions related, blah, 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 stores a freeze frame, stores a fail record, updates, with each. This is really common, type of DTC. Then we get into the B-type DTCs. This is a two-step DTC. This requires an arm, it sees it as a problem, and then another trip with the same problem in order to mature into a code. This is where we get the pending codes, okay? So we look at pending codes, hasn't matured into a full code yet, but it's on the list of stuff to watch. Now, we can see these where, one trip it fails, and then the next trip it passes, which disarms the code. And then a couple of trips later, it pops up again, but it never matures into a full code. This is where we go check the pending code file. Get it? Just because you don't have a hard code doesn't mean you don't have a code in there. It's like going and checking history codes. What code was in here that has matured out? Anyways, all right. So it'll freeze frame the first pending code. It'll freeze frame, then it'll update on the second one. Anyways, all right. Type C codes, these aren't emissions related, doesn't store a freeze frame. This is SES stuff, this is climate control, stuff like that. Anyways. And then we got a D-type code. This doesn't store anything. You need some specialized software to get at this type of code. But they are in there. And then we got a type X, which is kind of a unique code. These are usually used for export, okay? And I've run into this before where I've got a car that was built for export to Brazil. Well, Brazil, they don't require an O2 sensor. But this car has an O2 sensor. But it went bad. But nobody knows that. And the computer doesn't tell you that it went bad. Get it? Because it shouldn't make any difference. Now, how rare is it to see this stuff? It's pretty rare. But, I get a car that was bound for a different country that found its way back into this country. Or I have a car that's like an Asian car that was built for Dubai, coming into this country because somebody decided to import it, or even Canada, for Christ's sake. Sometimes these things can be an issue where it is a code that we should see, but we don't see it because it's been X'd out. Get it? Anyways. All right. I'm not going to talk about this kind of stuff. This is pass-fail. This is a flowchart. It's a pretty good flowchart. You should look it over. All right, there you go. Ready? One failed test always writes. One failed request is a type A. First fail of a type A writes freeze frame. First failed test arms a type B. First pass trip disarms a type B. First fail. Get where I'm going with this? Two consecutive trips for a type B will request the nil. It'll turn on the check engine light. Two consecutive type Bs writes a freeze frame. Two consecutive failures for fuel trim or misfire diagnostic, special procedures, special stuff. All right, here we go. Three consecutive passing trips will disable the mill. So if I've got a code and I've got three consecutive trips, it'll turn the mill off. Get it? Get it? All right. How do I decide? Let me back up. Let me let the cat out of the bag on this one. Honestly, you really shouldn't be clearing a code if you can avoid it. You let it self-clear. And this is the easiest way to do it, is to allow the car to clear its own code. How do I do that and make sure that I'm doing it correctly? It's real easy. We go, don't tell anybody, this is a secret. We go drive the freeze frame. Okay? The freeze frame tells us the operating conditions of the engine when it was set. When that code was generated, we have a freeze frame. All we got to do is put it into the same window of operating conditions, and without a flaw, without a fault, and it'll constitute a pass. Get it? Get it? So, look, if we clear the code, we wipe everything out, we put the phone back to factory, which means it has to run all these tests again. But the computer's job is to, really and truly, isn't to turn the check engine light on, it's to turn the check engine light off. That's what the manufacturer wants it to do, which is the reason why it only takes 3 trips to do it. It's not a lot. As a matter of fact, some stuff will clear almost instantly. We start getting into the comprehensive component monitor. More on this later. We start getting into that. As soon as I fix that code, just about, it'll clear it. All it's got to do is just make sure that it's good. And it'll go, oh, okay, we're good, turn it off. Get it? But if I clear the codes, I may not know if there's something else wrong for weeks. And I may not complete all my monitors for weeks. And in the winter, I may not complete my monitors until spring, which I really don't want to do. Okay? 40 warm-up cycles will clear out the DTC. It'll take it out of history. It'll kill the freeze frames. It'll kill everything. Now, some special conditions apply to fuel trims and misfires. These go to 80. Okay? Cat damaging misfires are type D DTC, but it'll hold tight on that type B. One pass. It'll hold that information for 80 trips, okay? But it needs to see this. It needs to see the same speed in load. Get it? So if it's not a consecutive trip, it's not the next trip, but it's somewhere within 80 trips, then as long as it sees the same speed, load, RPM, coolant temperature, that kind of stuff, it'll keep that type B diagnostic alive. Get it? That's about it. We'll talk again. Thanks.